Hello.
Welcome back.
This is the Synchronicity Podcast. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Megan.
And we change your brain to change your life. We take old patterning that you were given in childhood, flip it on its head, and give you new programming and new ways of thinking to integrate into your adult life to be a healthier, better integrated adult human in society. If you want more information, check us out, synchronicity222.com. Binge our content. We got lots of it at this point. Take one of our classes, ask us questions, and today we are talking about a very hot topic on social media that everyone seems to be talking about. And we are going to talk about microdosing, using microdosing, particularly psilocybin, to come off of medication, particularly SSRIs, SSNRIs, antidepressants, all sorts of, there's like a laundry list of them.
And disclaimer, we're not medical doctors or psychiatrists or anything. So we're not giving anybody medical advice or telling you to do this or whatever. We're giving experience, strength, and hope, essentially. And so, yeah, don't just like go run and be like, oh my God, the Synchronicity sister said to like stop taking my drugs.
Yeah, no.
Consult your doctor. We are also like, you're not under our care. And if you are, like, you're listening to this, we have a totally different relationship, but just a disclaimer.
No, yeah, you can't sue us because it's not.
Yeah, talk to your doctor.
Yeah, and this is, like I said, it's just from our direct experience. We're going to just, like, overview, talk about, like Meg said, we've seen tremendous results with individuals who we have worked with and tapering off their medication and just overall.
Yes.
What we really like have done and what we do every day with our clients that have really struggled with taking antidepressants and they like kind of really knew like, there's something not right. Like this is weird. And particularly when it came to PTSD, like OCD and stuff like that. There has been situations where we have tapered individuals off of particularly SSRIs and SSNRIs, and they're also working with a therapist, like an EMDR therapist, particularly specializing in treating symptoms like that. But we've seen tremendous results in regards to the way psilocybin helps with the serotonin receptors in the body.
Well, essentially what depression or anxiety or whatever it is that you're struggling with is thought patterning. And so what we do is use microdosing with reprogramming of our own, essentially we do androgynous semantic realignment with an emphasis in transactional analysis, if you want to get like super technical on what we do. But we use microdosing to essentially heal PTSD, which PTSD is what's causing any of your mental illness that you're experiencing. And what's really interesting is when you break down SSRIs or SSNRIs or antidepressants, there's actually no data whatsoever that even prove that they help. They might numb or do things, and if you consider that helping, numbing yourself, then and some people need to be numb in order to survive this life. I am not judging or bashing, but it's really interesting because one of my mentors, who's Dr. Eric Berg, when I became a nutritionist underneath him, it was really fascinating because he was the first person that ever said to me, there's no data that prove that antidepressants do anything. And I was like, what? Because I know so many people on antidepressants. It's crazy.
Everyone.
And I was like, they don't do anything? Well, I mean, 27% of people today that go to the doctor come out on some kind of mind-altering chemical. So, but that's the thoughts and not accepting feelings. And when you're taught as a child to not accept your feelings, you've been damaged. And that's the problem in our society is we don't make space for people to feel. We try to fix their feelings. And when you're trying to fix a feeling, then of course you're going to medicate it because you don't accept it. So your intolerance, and, this is some of the stuff that we teach of just like, you accept a feeling and you let it pass through you, and then you choose to respond to that feeling. You don't react. And we live in a very reactive culture, a reactive society, and it doesn't know how to handle their feelings because really the only thing you can do for feelings is to murder somebody, suicide, drugs, alcohol, or some kind of self-medication, or you can be medicated by a doctor. And that's what we're seeing, medicate the feelings from a doctor. And that's not actually accepting the feelings or working through feelings. It's like I said before, it's numbing feelings, and you are your thoughts. Most of us have just been taught by our parents and by culture to follow negative thought patternings. If you turn on the news or anything, it's all fear tactics. It's all negative, 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 negative. And we have been bombarded with just like fear, anxiety, panic, think bad about each other. You live in a hateful world. And when that's been programmed into a culture, you are going to see mental illness take root and control, because from the time we're children, even in churches, we're taught fire and brimstone. We're not taught a loving God. We're not taught loving humans. We're taught to be in fear constantly. And if you put an animal in fear constantly, fight or flight, you're going to need to be medicated. Like that's not a normal circumstance, right? Cortisol levels, and you're wondering why like 65% of the population is obese. Like their cortisol levels are fucked. So anyway, that's why we're seeing such a, not just us, microdosing or psilocybin really take root in the consciousness, because it's the first time anybody's ever felt happy and gets them out of fight or flight. You're never going to see an angry person on mushrooms. So.
No, I saw a post yesterday, and it was like this picture. It was a video of this girl posted of her mom taking mushrooms.
I reposted that.
Yeah, and it was like literally
the
first
time my mom's ever
felt joy in her life, and I was like, oh, I love this right now. Excuse me, but so often, people will come to us, and we don't just break down like where your feelings are. We kind of go about this as like a whole body experience, people work in psilocybin, but we break down like, hey, what's going on and how are you communicating? And, I've even experienced, like, I would probably say in the last year, 7 months to a year, like, even just working in my own feelings has been so hard, because society doesn't accept feelings. They look at it as weak, or like people don't know what to do with you. And the more you can integrate your feelings and understand that their feelings are feelings, and like you're allowed to have them, they're allowed to have space. And if someone doesn't want to hold space for your feelings, then that's on them. But you can feel your feelings. And even just being able to recognize the patterning, and that's what psilocybin really does, is it slows down and hyper accentuates like what's going on in your mind, and says, okay, look at this might be a trigger, or I'm really tired, or this or that. And then you're able to say, oh, okay, well, this is a patterning, and then I can rewire it. This feeling is like overwhelming. Oh, this is the first time I've ever had feelings. Okay, well, now we have options. What are we going to do with these feelings? Most of the time we don't do anything with them. We observe them, we process them, we, meditate, we breathe, we recognize, and we move on with our day. But in a society where like even school-age children aren't allowed to have feelings, they're supposed to be stuck into this system, and like it's a conveyor belt of pain, we then question society and say, okay, how did we get here? Well, we got here because we never made space for children to begin with. And so it's really like that inner child recognizing like feelings in the adult, or the adult recognizing the inner child feelings. And then you're able to like just be like, okay, I got this. And then once you start to integrate feelings, then you start to see like, oh, the PTSD dissolves. Oh, the OCD dissolves. Oh, the addiction dissolves. And you start to have this kind of radical accountability for your feelings, and a choice of like, I need to feel these, I need to think, and then I get to choose, what am I either going to do, react or go for a walk?
Well, and it's just interesting, because the 3 non-negotiables in life that nobody really likes is pain, uncertainty, and constant work. And it's always what people are at odds with, right? And it's what addiction seems to like. Well, I mean, addiction is the fight against pain, because you were never taught in childhood how to deal with uncertainty, pain, and constant work. And so people become victims to those 3 things, and they fight against them, and they rebel. You can't rebel against the law of nature, the law of humanness. That's part of acceptance. Do I even like it some days? No. But I absolutely accept that those are the laws of the physical world and of being here as a soul. And that I deal with that in healthy ways versus self-medicating. You know, I might self-medicate with like yoga or meditation or breath work. Like, it's just crazy that most traumatized people don't even know how to breathe correctly.
Yes.
It's funny because our mentor is always like, when we're going through something, are you breathing? Because it starts there. You know, you contract within the chest and within the lungs, and that's all from not using your voice. And using your voice is such a difficult thing because, you know, at least it has been for me, like I would rather not say anything and not create waves. And then I start using my voice and I'm creating waves and it's like, oh my gosh, like I shouldn't have done that. And then it's like, no, you would have ended up at the same crossroads just later when there's more pain involved than if you just take it on earlier. And that's the thing. When we avoid things, we're really just pushing it off. We still have to deal with it. But every time we push it off, we're actually making it worse, which is, again, thought patterning, which, again, is avoidant patterning or anxiety, which are pretty much the same thing. But, you know, it's just these people that are essentially people that are on SSRIs, SSNRIs, antidepressants. They are underdeveloped in some area of being an adult or the adult ego state, right? There's 3 ego states. And, you know, that's not shame. That's not me guilting you. That's because, again, I've been there. It's understanding that, like, oh, I'm immature somewhere and I didn't have tools because my parents didn't give me them. So when I get into a certain circumstance in my life, I break down. And that's always comes back to communication. Where's your lack of communication? Where's your understanding of masculine communication versus feminine communication? How are your conflict resolution skills? You know, all relationships, whether it's work, whether it's siblings, whether it's friends, whether it's intimate, comes back to how you deal with conflict. Because everything's fine and fun and games until you hit conflict. You need tools for conflicts. And that's where, especially the feminine, has not been given tools on how to play fair and fight for love. We fight for power, not for love. And, you know, we want to win and da-da-da. It's like, do you want to win or do you, you know, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy, right? And being right is winning. And it's just like so fascinating because the triggers that are in me, I see it in all of our clients. And that makes sense because, you know, people are attracted, like attracts like. And as I see this in our clients, I'm like, oh gosh, I did that. Oh gosh, that's me. Oh my gosh. Like, and I'm constantly just reinforced of why I'm doing this work and how I used to play games with people and how unhappy I was when I was, you know, in those games versus very conscious of like what I'm doing and how I'm showing up. And, you know, if we numb ourselves, you know, and again, if you feel like you need medication, more power to you. But we're just here to tell you that there are other options. There really, truly are other options. And the research and the data coming out are astounding. And there's no side effects, which is so insane to me. I can't even. So we're just here to encourage the movement of like, there are other answers besides a life sentence of being on pharmaceutical medication, and just seek outside the box.
Well, and, you know, even pharmaceutical, I mean, I have my own opinion about it. I do believe that some people are so severely mentally ill, they do need to be medicated. And our mentor believes that as well. Like, some people need to be medicated.
I'm just talking about SSRIs, SSNRIs. I'm not talking about like antipsychotics or things like that.
Well, I just want to I'm just clarifying.
I'm not telling a biopollar person to come off their lithium.
Yeah. We're not trying to.
I am saying seek a second opinion if it's like talk to your doctor, right? And if this is not a serious like.
It's mainly focusing on serotonin.
Yeah, like, no, I'm not. I'm definitely not saying that no one should be medicated.
Serotonin inhibitors and norepinephrine inhibitors, because we know serotonin plays key roles in dopamine. It plays key roles in norepinephrine, and then we know that norepinephrine is created from high levels of dopamine, which then triggers certain parts of the brain, like ADHD.
You know who has high levels of dopamine?
Who?
Alpha process.
Yeah. And there's a really good book about dopamine addiction. It's called Dopamine Nation. We've talked about it many times. But they're actually like even proving like ADHD, like it's a high level of dopamine. And actually psilocybin works great on serotonin receptors in the brain that help the dopamine, that help the triggers, that help the flow state of the brain. Because ADHD is just almost, quite frankly, it's a form of addiction, just like OCD, just like taking a medication. It's just different chemically in the brain,
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I know that just sounded really, really crazy, but having people tell me my whole life that I had ADHD, and then when I looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, I totally have like addictive tendencies. They may not be substance, or they were substance early on in life and then they evolved into other things, but I have a severe like ADHD brain, but I don't identify with ADHD. I just identify with the fact that like this is trauma in my brain, and like psilocybin has tremendously helped me, and we've seen it help with severe like OCD and PTSD and stuff like that. But
All of those are the same.
Yeah, they're all the same in the brain under brain scans, and this is all backed by research. They've done a lot of studies, and more studies are coming out as psilocybin becomes more legal.
Well, it's all impulse control.
Right.
Addicts and ADHD all have impulse control issues. So do OCD. It's all impulse control, and it's won't versus can't.
Right.
And it's actually fucking fascinating. It's all trauma.
It's super fascinating. And so like, people are like, there's no cure for alcoholism. There's no cure for this. There's no cure for that. And I call bullshit on that because I think I give it the next 10 years, we're going to see a massive push in this psychedelic world. Because I've seen what it's done, not only in our clients, but in my sister Meg and I's life. Like, we've both come from addiction in some way, shape, or form, and we've been able to harness it and turn it into positivity. Our company, other people, identifying it. That it's really just been source identification and really just like being able to slow down and recognize it and take full accountability for it. And almost to a sense like where you don't identify it with it anymore.
Well, we've slapped labels on trauma in all these different ways of like coping mechanisms and things like that. And it's just like so interesting because they're really all the same thing. Just like bipolar and narcissistic personality disorder are pretty much the same thing.
Textbook, yeah.
It's just really like schizophrenia and being a psychopath are pretty much the same thing, just on opposite ends of the spectrum. And both are severely, severely traumatized. And, even some psychopaths hear voices of the devil and whatever. So it's just really interesting to me of like, psychiatrists and everyone can slap all these labels on people. And actually even Carl Jung's original work started in psych wards, listening to psychiatric, and I've actually heard people say this. It's really interesting when you're around people, and I've heard this with like homeless people, like they're babbling, but when you really listen to what they're saying, it's usually the same trauma pattern over and over and over and over and over again. But there's something profound in it that they're trying to convey, or they'll have these like moments of like spiritual clarity, or people with dementia and things. They're almost like in the in between. Sometimes they're so tapped into the mass consciousness. It's actually quite interesting. So crazy, like what actually is crazy? Are we crazy because we have no idea, or are they crazy? So anyway, beside the point, but what plant medicine is kind of bringing back into the consciousness is like we're all wounded, but those wounds are actually our strength. They're actually the path that we were meant to walk in order to find our light. And it's not this detrimental thing. We can either become victims to what has happened to us, or victors and see it as this was the path that my soul was given, and I'm here. And anybody that does anything great, if you look at like even Tony Robbins or like Abraham Lincoln or like anybody that has done anything, look at the trauma that they overcame in order to have the strength in order to step forward as who they were meant to be and then change the course of history. Carl Jung, Eric Berne, all of them have insane stories. And, it's like we can either sit and wallow, or we can transmute that and step forward fully embodied and say like, I may not be perfect because nobody is. And this is a battle that I will, again, constant work is one of the non-negotiables. And step forward in your full strength and be the light at the end of the tunnel for other people to also step into their full strength. This is not a life sentence. And I actually piggybacking off what Nicole said, I actually think even mental illness like schizophrenia, like bipolar, like fully ill humans, we're going to find through psychedelic therapy, there's just going to be profound research in those things. But yeah, if you're... Whoa. Do you hear our Dalmatian?
Apparently she's saying, if you like us, you need, if you're watching this on YouTube, like us, according to Miss Shiloh, subscribe, share, and let your friends know about us. If you're curious or you want us to elaborate on any of this, we always have scientific research backing this up, not just individual testimonies and clients that we've worked with, but leave us a comment. If you're following us on Apple or Spotify, like, share, and we always love reviews and to give stars. And until next time, bye.